All right, spring is here. HVAC repairs are coming. So we're going to break down today what to look for so you're protected on your next service call so you don't get scammed. So we're going to break that down right now. The Educated Homeowner, Know Your Home Like a Pro, brought to you by A New Day Construction, where every day is a new day. All right, welcome, guys. Today we got Avery from Avery's Heating and Air. Let me say that right, or AVJ. How do you say it?
Avery's HVAC.
Very cool. So I've been working with Avery for almost 3 years now, right?
Yes, sir.
So he's our main guy. And the thing about when I form a relationship with like-minded people, it means they got to have good integrity, Christian-based company, good morals. So he has passed the test. He's been with us 3 years. Amazing guy. So today, what we're going to talk about today, when I brought him on, is help educate you, the homeowner, on what to look for, when a technician comes out, so you don't get scammed, because there's a lot of crazy things that happen in this industry, and we want to make sure you're protected. So first and foremost, Avery, tell us a little bit about you and about your company, and I know you're kind of like, oh, I got these cameras in front of me, but yeah, tell us a little about you. How long you been in business? What your business is like.
So we are a commercial and residential heating and air conditioning company based out of Auburn, Georgia. We been in business for 4 years. I've been in the industry for 17. We are, like Jerry said, a Christian-based company. We do highly value integrity, honesty, and our approach and everything we do is to make sure our customers are informed, and that way you know what you're buying when you're buying it with us.
Yeah. And what I loved about you as a company, and you first come in, when you come in, you said, I'm going to beat everybody's price. And I think that's how you kind of get in the market. But still, what I love that you're honest. I've seen you come out to situations where, you was able to say, I think we talked about one the other day, you was talking about the person with a cracked coil that they said it was cracked.
Mm-hmm.
And so a little bit about that and that experience you had of helping a homeowner save some money and save a costly repair.
Okay. So it was a referral to us from another customer. They had one of the big box companies come out and do what big box companies do. They want to basically make the repairs seem undoable so they can put you in a new system. In this case, they were told they had a cracked heat exchanger, a bad control board, and their repairs were going to total over $8,000. Well, they failed to tell the homeowner the heat exchanger was still under warranty if they wanted to proceed that route. I always inform my homeowners of that. And, the labor to change a heat exchanger on a residential split system is typically not worth it compared to what you can buy a furnace for. But we still inform our customers, hey, this is a repair you can do. This is what it's going to cost. This is what a furnace would cost. But the technician never removed the blower to inspect the crack he supposedly saw with a camera. So when I got there, after diagnosing it, we found that the contactor outside was bad. So I unplugged the contactor to make sure everything would run without it. And it did. So we knew that part was bad. There was no control boards bad. None of that stuff was going on. So I told the homeowner, based on that assertion there, we should pull the blower. Again, there is a charge to pull the blower because it does take time and effort and unwiring things to get it out of the way, to inspect your heat exchanger to make sure we don't see any visible cracks. So they agreed to it, and upon doing that, I pulled the blower, stuck my head in the unit, shined a light, and so every bit of that heat exchanger from the bottom, which is typically where they like to crack, is where most of the heat is. And what I found was there was no visible cracks. There was, no real discoloration outside of normal wear and tear. The unit itself in question was only 10 years old. Again, to a lot of companies, 10-year-old units are replaceable and they're not going to further diagnose it. And in some cases that is correct. But in this case here, I informed the homeowners there's no visible cracks. We can repair your unit. It ended up being around $400 with the pulling the blower and looking at it. So
wow. From 8,000 to 400.
Correct.
Wow.
So in doing all that, I informed them I will come back on maintenance in the fall, and I will run a carbon monoxide test to make sure there's no cracks that open up when the heat exchanger heats up, because that can happen. They can be closed when it's cold and then open when it's warmer.
So there could be a crack.
Correct.
That's not.
But the proper tools to test for that crack are carbon monoxide meters at the ductwork and also combustion analyzers. So they that attaching the flue that read the combustion and how the gases are mixing and all that stuff. So those are the two true tools to test for a heat exchanger that's bad.
So if that customer would have said, "Hey, how did you test it?" and if they knew this, they could have asked for that test.
Well, there are certain cases where I will test with my carbon monoxide meter, but there's also some telltale signs in the flame. Sometimes it'll blow back. Sometimes it'll turn orange halfway down it, where it's got oxygen introduced to it because of a crack.
Right.
So there should be some sign somewhere, not just they snake the camera in there and they got something that looks like a crack.
Right.
Just there should be some kind of way to verify, hey, this is for sure cracked. Here's why. And any legitimate technician, if the homeowner wants to go down and look with them, should be able to take them down there, show them.
They should be able, so in that situation, they need to pull it out so they can actually inspect it instead of the camera.
If yes, I mean we want to pull and inspect everything.
So that other company didn't do that; they were just on camera. Yeah.
And if we did pull and inspect it and found a faulty heat exchanger as well, that we or confirmed our diagnosis, then we would take whatever that cost and credit it toward the install, provided you went with us.
Right. Now, I'm curious here. So based on that 8,000, let's say if it was cracked, you got to replace it. How much should it have been?
So with what they said, the typical control board, if that was a problem that was bad, which probably 85% of the time it's not, that gets misdiagnosed a lot in our industry. Mm-hmm. But they it could have been anywhere from $1,000 to $1,500 depending on the control board, maybe cheaper, just depending on how much the board costs from whoever it's from. In this case, it was a Train unit, so sometimes they're a little more proud of their parts than other brands. And the labor to replace the heat exchanger, typically could range from $1,500 to maybe $3,000 max, just depending.
Yeah.
So I mean, they weren't far off in their original quote. They just didn't get the diagnosis right.
Right. Which caused, and the bad thing about that, when your unit goes down, let's say it's 90 degrees outside, it's like they have the upper hand. You know what I mean? Because you want it in there, and you don't. Do I need to get a second opinion? Well, is that going to be another day or so before somebody comes out?
Right.
So would it be a good idea to, if your unit goes down, to go ahead and call a couple of them and have them come out at the same time? That way you can get both those opinions.
Yeah. So my thing would be, do your research on the company, look at their website, look for reviews. Like in the case of my company, our Google reviews are not extreme because our reviews are done through our dispatch software, which directly relates to our website. So there's over 200 or 300, I think now at this point, 5-star reviews on our website. And, they should be mixed a little bit, but talk to your friends, ask them, what company do you use? Who do you recommend? Because if they're recommending them, that means either A, they took care of them, they did them right, and you will have more comfort knowing that.
Right.
Because again, when it is the middle of summer and your unit is down, a lot of people are, 2-3 days out, sometimes up to 2 weeks out. I've had, but you just want to make sure that you're going with the right company that is going to treat you right and not sell you things in your time of need that you don't need.
Right. And that makes perfect sense, So, like he said, making sure the biggest referral, is from your friends, because every one of your friends, family, everybody has an HVAC system. They've had it worked on. And so to ask them for some lead on that, probably the best thing to go.
Correct.
So I know there's some common scams in the industry, that to look out for, and sometimes they're hard to catch. But I think you mentioned something when we were talking earlier. To help some of this is maybe put in a maintenance agreement, and tell us a little bit what that looks like. Because what you don't want to do, what I understand, is if you don't have a maintenance agreement in place and you're just waiting for your unit to break down, then you're just waiting for your unit to break down. A maintenance agreement helps keep an eye on that, helps prolong that from happening. So how does that work, and what should a maintenance agreement cost?
So for our company, you know, it's $89 for the first system and $79 for each additional system. And that's for twice a year visits. So we'll come out in the spring, come out in the fall. And in the spring, we're going to clean your condenser coil. We're going to make sure your filters are changed. We're going to make sure that the common wear parts, capacitors, contactors, everything look and test the way they should. Mm-hmm. You know, if something's out of line, we're going to bring it to your attention then, hey, your capacitor is a 45 by 5 and it's reading 40, which is out of its 5% margin. It may not be a problem right now, but it's going to be a problem in the near future. Right. You know, and you know, our goal with our maintenance agreements is to keep the price point low enough to where you can afford to do the repairs at that time. Right. We don't want such a high cost on maintenance agreements that you can't afford the repair. Right. Right. And also too, it eliminates some of, you know, the hassle of it breaking in the middle of summer and now you got to call this company, that company, the other company. You've already got a relationship with a company that you've built and that you can trust their technicians, mm-hmm. you know, and, you know, the same thing. If you don't trust the technicians that come to your house, find another company. Don't just keep them because it's convenient. That's what these previous folks that I was telling you about did with that unit. And, you know, they kept them because it was convenient. It's who they used to call in. Mm-hmm. And, you know, they got taken, you know, full right advantage of, right. You know, and almost bought a $16,000 unit that was, you know, about double what they really needed to spend if they had to replace the unit.
Wow. All right. So great information so far, but what about the scams? What are the common things you see out there that people get taken advantage of?
So we want to clearly define scams versus someone trying to take care of you as a customer. Okay. So there's a lot of things that are going to feel like a scam for someone that's not as educated in the industry as the technician is. Mm-hmm. So, you know, for instance, what we like to see is a 3-tier approach, most common in the industry, depending on who you call. You know, you've got what fixes your main problem now, what addresses a future problem, and what addresses every problem we could find.
Okay.
I mean, it sounds, you know, like, whoa, that's a lot. But so like, let's say capacitors and contactors are your normal wear parts typically that go bad. You know, capacitors typically go bad with heat and just age. Contactors can get ants in them. They can get contacts where they're pitted, because when they engage, they basically kind of create a small arc typically, not big enough to be able to be seen, but enough to burn the contacts up over time.
Okay.
So if we're going out there for a bad capacitor and you've got a contactor that looks charred up and, you know, like it could fail in the near future. Well, your capacitor fixes your immediate problem. That is you have to do that to get your system running.
Right.
The capacitor and contactor together, while you'll pay a little less for them at the time, because there's typically on most heating air companies different charges for a single part versus a part with another repair. You know, that would give you the ability to go ahead and address that component that is potentially failing in the near future, and give you the ability to ensure, you know, you're not calling us 2 weeks from now because it broke down again. Right. And your 3rd-tier approach would be whatever else the technician saw while he was looking at your system.
Right.
You know, typically most people stay in that 1st or 2nd tier. It don't matter to us as a company. We're not here to sell. We're here to inform, and you make the decision based on that right. information. Now, the difference is with a company or a person that's trying to scam, because, you know, the industry's based a lot, especially lately. Most companies have to spiff or bonus their employees based on performance, based on sales. That's how the kind of pay structure has gone in the industry.
So let me break that down. Mm-hmm. So basically you're saying they get incentivized to upsell.
Correct.
Okay.
But it's also it's incentivized to provide the full value to the customer. Because what you're creating is a technician that gets paid a little extra, and it's not much. You know, it may be $10 here, $10 there.
$25, $50, right. Yeah. But that adds up over call after call.
Correct.
Call. Yep.
But what you're wanting to do is produce a technician that can produce a quality service for our customers. So you want them to go through that system a little more thoroughly than they would. if they didn't have that incentive.
Right.
You want them to go, hey, the capacitor is bad, but I saw this contactor too, just so you know.
Right. Right.
Whether you choose to buy that or not, it's up to you, but still, that's what you want to breed. But also with that, what you breed is someone who has a little looser morals, and you also breed someone in certain aspects of this trade, certain companies. Some technicians are totally commission based.
Right.
We don't do that. A lot of companies don't, but there are some that do.
Right.
So you end up with a potential for, them coming in there selling things
like a cracked,
like in the case of the last story, the cracked heat exchanger that was not cracked.
Yeah.
I mean, it's, that's a prime example of kind of, because the person that's here to scam you, and there's not really any real common scam, so to speak.
right?
Because it's just, if they're willing to not explain things to you, not show you things, not talk you through them and show you what they found,
Right.
then that's when it's time to really question it, get a second opinion,
Right.
whatever you need to do, because, it's definitely important to make sure that you're informed of what you're buying.
Right.
Because, again, you don't know the parts. You don't know what they're called. You don't know what they do.
Right.
And, but Google is your friend. And, you can Google just about anything now,
right.
and find answers on there.
Yeah. And we'll talk about that. Even ChatGPT is better than that. So, yeah.
Right. That's it.
So I want to go over this label too, before we go there, because, teaching you guys what's on this label, because you had mentioned the other scam too, is not mention that you have a warranty still in place on your unit.
Correct.
Because they don't get paid as much for doing a warranty call than they get for a
Correct.
service call. So there's a way you can find out whether you still have a warranty. I think you said on that last one you went on, they had a warranty still left on.
Well, the heat exchanger itself carries a warranty. A lot of companies don't inform the customers of that because, again, they don't want to change a heat exchanger because it is a undertaking. But you still shouldn't hold that information back from your customer.
Right.
Again, 9 times out of 10, it really does exceed the value of the unit.
Right.
But again, your customer should be informed, hey, there is a warranty on this part, just not the labor. Here's what the labor would be.
I think the other one's free on too, is those one of the things like we put 4 pounds or 10 pounds or 20 pounds or 30 pounds,
Right.
How do you know?
Right.
So this will help us out here to help hold that accountable too, because, let me go back before we get to here. So a good idea from what I'm hearing from you is for a customer, if a service technician comes out and tells you the capacitor is bad, tells you it's bad, to go look, say, can you show me what's going on? That way the customer get an idea what's going on. No.
Correct. And you will have, it'll be a good way to catch, pay attention to someone's mannerisms when you're asking those questions, Hey, you said this is bad. But again, if your unit don't start and they put a new one on and it does, you really don't have to look into that too hard.
Right.
It's kind of based on the situation. If you get a bad vibe from whoever you're using or you don't trust them, tell them thank you for your service, have a nice day, and pay them their service call fee and send them on the way and call somebody else.
Right.
In all honesty, that's because there's no way to really know.
So that gut feeling you're talking about.
Right. Yeah. Go off of that because again, there's no way to really know. And some technicians can explain better than others. There's always that. But if you have a gut feeling someone is trying to rip you off or something that don't make sense, then yeah, get a second opinion, get a third opinion.
Well, and you mentioned something earlier too about being professional. They're coming, making sure they're got the proper uniform on, they're driving a proper truck. For not, then that may hurt you. And then typically, let me ask you this question: if you come out and you repair something, do you give a warranty on what you repair?
Yeah, most repairs are relatively minor warranties, just depending on what it is. Like a capacitor or contactor will warranty for a year. If we come back in a year for that same part being bad, that's when you replace fully free of charge.
Okay.
What we find a lot of times is we're not coming back for that part, and that there is another problem at that point.
Right.
But like let's say for instance, if you decided to change a compressor, the compressor from that manufacturer offers a year warranty, but typically our industry standard is probably 90 days on the warranty or on the labor side of things, because if something happened a year from now, even though the compressor may still be under warranty, there's still a charge and a cost for the company itself to go back and change that compressor out again.
Right.
refrigerant's one thing that's not covered under any manufacturer warranty whatsoever.
Good old
So,
refrigerant.
yeah, that is, it feels scammy, but it's how their warranties are all written. If you read an actual warranty paperwork on the manufacturer's website or their packet they give you, it tells you refrigerant's not covered.
Okay. So yeah, Ben, you brought that up. So let's go over how to read a label. Because, first of all, let's talk about, how do you find out if you still have a warranty on your unit?
So this is a unit or outdoor unit label. The one on the inside unit looks a little different, but you've got a model number here, which denotes, the series, the SEER rating, typically if it's a heat pump or air conditioning, the size, and then a couple extra numbers depending on the other options it may have. But inside of the serial number, like in this case here, you got a 58 and then a 98. That unit is a 98 model unit. Now, you're not going to know that if you're sitting there reading that, probably, because sometimes it's harder to tell. But you can Google either one of these numbers, or typically this number here, and you can break it down, type in Linux, serial number, yada, yada, yada. And it'll, pull that unit up. And then, even further, if you have a newer unit and you go to Linux's website, you can look up warranty. Ring's website's the same way. Train's website's the same way. And now it'll tell you if the unit's under warranty or not. It's very important, especially if it's less than 10 years old, to check that before someone comes, just so you'll know. I mean, it's simple. I mean, but it's also a place where you can be potentially misled or scammed, if you will, because I've seen it happen in the past where I went to a customer's house and they said they had a bad compressor. Well, they never told the customer it's under warranty, ever.
Wow.
And I think they either quoted them a compressor change out, not under warranty, and they also quoted them a new unit.
Right.
Again, another big boss got me that pays their technicians with commission only. And again, not bad if you have the right person, bad if you have the wrong person. Right. In this case, they had the wrong person, and fortunately they called us and we went to their house and it was like, hey, yes, you have a bad compressor, but it is under warranty. Here's what it's going to cost.
So I've got a ninja trick for you guys to help you get to the right pricing. Now, it's not going to be perfect, but it's going to help you, guide you through this. So if you use ChatGPT, if you never used it before, you can download it on your phone. But you can ask ChatGPT to put that serial number in and then say, hey, how much is a capacitor replacement cost? Now, we just did that and it come up with 150 to 300, I think 350 or 300. And you said you actually charge somewhere around 350.
Yeah. So you don't have to have the model serial number, by the way. You can ask it just the random parts, whatever. I think we're somewhere between the 300 and 350 range. I couldn't tell you exactly about looking, but still it's a good tool, but always remember that lowest number is probably not what you're going to pay. Exactly. Unless you're hiring out a guy that's just one guy in a truck, then sure. But if you're hiring a larger heating and air conditioning company, medium to large size company, and you're going to get the value in that as far as their availability, their warranties, their, all that stuff encompassed in there, you're going to probably pay a little more than what that lower amount.
Right. So ChatGPT will give you that baseline.
Right.
Then you use your common sense and your knowledge to know, but at least to give you the baseline. That way you don't go from an $8,000 repair down to, like you said, could have been.
Well, you'll know with that baseline if someone's hitting you at $800 for a capacitor, that's just no. It's and they do, and there are companies that do that. I've seen their quotes before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yeah, definitely utilize ChatGPT or any of the AI models out there because it'll help you out. So let's go over this now. We already talked about warranty issues, but also another common thing we talked about too is Freon. Mm-hmm. So how do you know how much your unit can handle? What's the maximum?
So on any outdoor unit, there's a factory charge. Usually it's in ounces only. You have to divide it to convert it to pounds. But in this case, you'll see here, it says, I believe 8 pounds and 3 ounces is what this factory charge is. So, if someone's coming out there telling you your system is going to take 10, 15 pounds of refrigerant, they're full of crap. Typically speaking, if you're recharging a system, without doing any repairs, and it takes more than half of this charge here, you're throwing money down the drain. That's because if it's leaked down that much, you've got a pretty extensive leak. With refrigerant prices bouncing across the board, I never know what I'm going to pay from month to month on refrigerant for the company.
Wow.
So therefore, I have a charge in my system, and as long as it varies within a certain range, it stays the same. But typically you're looking at $100 to $120 a pound for most companies these days.
Wow.
Used to it was $40 a pound.
I remember that.
Yeah. So, you think about it. Let's say your system does it 8 pounds, and say you need a 4. You can do the math. It gets really expensive really quickly. So, what we like to do is try to educate our customers and offer these options to leak search, find the leak, see if we can repair the leak, and then charge it up.
So I'm glad you said that. So if they're saying you need Freon, it had to get out somehow, right? So there's got to be a leak, or
Correct.
so there's no way for it to just leak down.
No.
There's a leak.
No, refrigerant does not just evaporate. It is a sealed system, and if it is low, it is either due to improper install. So one of the things we do as a company, and it's not on this particular model and serial number here, but a lot of them do have on the outside unit where it says indoor TXV subcooling, which is basically how you properly charge the system. Now, sometimes you have to take the door off, look inside it, whatever. But we use those values, and again, most reputable companies should subcool and superheat, along with the pressures that give you an accurate charge on the system. So if it's a newer system, we find it low, a pound or so low, it's probably because whoever installed it did not do that, and we just need to add a little bit at a time. But as the system ages, you get to the point of where you're adding refrigerant, there is a leak somewhere. 90% of the time, I'd say it's going to be in the indoor coil section. Other 10% of the time may be cracked here or there outside, something that's easy to repair. Typically, if it is an indoor coil leaking, depending on the age of the system, depending on the kind of system it is, if it's out of warranty, that's kind of one of those repairs you're looking at cost to fix versus cost to replace.
Right.
Replacement gets you a warranty on the full system. Yes, there's a higher cost in it, but it puts you in a situation of setting yourself up better for the future. Whereas making a repair that may be half the cost of the new system,
right.
You don't have any warranty on any other part. So let's say you fixed the evaporator core. What you didn't know, and what the technician didn't know, is because that thing's been leaking for so long, it's wore that compressor down. 6 months later, the compressor dies. Well, now you've got another major thousands of dollars of repair that you wouldn't have had you just replaced the full system.
Right. Yeah, taking a chance. Yeah. All right. So let's talk about upsells, because I know that you talked about those, technicians getting commissions. Of course, they get commission on upsells.
Correct.
So what are the upsell items that they try to tell you that it's worth it, but sometimes it's not?
So there's in a lot of the upsell stuff, or the stuff that they're trying to push, is something you can benefit from if you were to buy it, but you don't have to have it on your system.
Okay.
One of the common things is Remy Halo or the like, which is an air purification system that mounts out after your unit and purifies the air in the house and allows for you to, have cleaner, fresher air, kills viruses, airborne pathogens, all that stuff.
Right.
It is a great component. It is very useful if your budget allows for it, but it's not something you need. And there is no test that anyone can do to test your air quality.
I know you said that earlier. Somebody said there's a meter that sometimes it's fake meter. Somebody say, tell us about that.
Yeah. So, I've seen it happen in this industry so many times where someone will go tell a homeowner, well, your air is just so horrible and dirty. We tested it with this such and such meter, and but there's not anything that to my knowledge that exists on the market today that tests air quality in the house for the purpose of the devices that are going.
Right.
Basically, when you're looking at those style devices, you're looking at your health quality, your how you're breathing in your house, what will help with that. If you're getting sick a lot, one of the biggest things I would recommend doing is, if you are getting feeling stuffy, stopped up and stuff in your house, having a reputable company come out and look at the ductwork, does it need to be cleaned? Do you benefit from that?
Right.
Um,
Glad you said that. That's actually something we do as a
Correct.
company, as duct cleaning. And so, yeah, it's, there's a difference between, like you said, putting a UV light in there that helps, but it doesn't help with the dust and debris that comes through, catches through.
Correct.
So duct cleaning, maybe once a year. And then they're able to spray that disinfectant in there to help keep that quality of air flowing and things clean.
Yeah. So, accompanying a duct cleaning with the UV light and the better filtration system as a whole package, if you're having issues breathing in your house or having issues with being sick and stuff, is definitely a beneficial thing.
Right.
But again, you'll get a lot of companies that come out there and they'll upsell it and try to use scare tactics, and it's a great component, but it's not a necessity, so to speak.
Right. I guess you said something I thought is really cool. Scare tactics of being pressured. So if you feel like you're being pressured, like you feel that it's an immediate thing, then red flags go up. And there's it's okay for you to go, hey, I need to talk to my husband about it, or I need to talk to my wife about it. I just need a timeout so I can think about it. So do not let anybody pressure you or anything that they got to do it today. And if we get it done today, it's going to be this much, but I'll come back, it's going to be this much. All that stuff is just sales tactic, trying to scare you into doing something that you don't need to be doing at that point.
Yeah. So think of it as when you go to a car dealership. Oh, well, this cars, they're just so popular. They're only going to be here. There are only so many of them, that made, and, this is a great price. We're going to only offer this price today. We're going to give you this for your trade-in today. Mm-hmm. But the second you walk out of the dealership, 2 weeks later, they're calling you trying to give you a better deal.
Right.
Not saying that a heat and air company will call you to give you a better deal, but it's the same tactics that are used in anybody that does high pressure sales.
Yeah.
You should never be pressured from a contractor, mechanical or otherwise, in your house to buy something. Yeah. It should be a very friendly process, educating process, and then a decision that's left with you as the customer as to how to proceed.
Right. That actually didn't happen at air conditioning, but I was looking at the software program we were buying, and same thing. The guy's like, well, today, if you buy it today, we're going to knock $4,000 off of it. Mm-hmm. But if you don't do it today, then we're not going to do that. It's like, then we need to end our conversation. Yep. I said, if you can't offer me the same price a week from now, because I need to think about it, then you're not a reputable company. He backed up, said, oh, we'll be fine. So I got my free trial. I got this. So it's okay to stand up and say, hey, I don't want to be pressured. This is not, any good reputable company should not be pressuring you into anything.
Correct.
It should be advising you, educating you, let you make the decision, and giving you a timeout to think about things.
Yeah. And, the caveat to that is typically in the way the industry is going, so there is a new refrigerant change. They're going from 410A to 454B.
Again?
Yes. You'll have a lot of people give you scare tactics with it. It's flammable. It does have mild flammable probabilities, but it is not flammable by a spark. It is not flammable. You have to effectively hold a torch on it to have it at night, and the second you take a torch off of it,
stops.
It stops. I mean, that's 2,000 degrees or whatever it is. So nothing to worry about. That's another scare tactic that people whatever. But it's with that, the equipment. I get emails probably monthly right now about price increases, because right now 454 is hard to find. The R32 systems that Goodman sells, they have in stock. They're okay, but what they don't tell you about that is the people that sell them is eventually that refrigerant is going to be phased out too. R54 is good for, I can't remember how many years it is exactly off the top of my head, but it meets the requirements for the Department of Energy up until a certain point, whereas R32 only meets it to like 2 years from now.
Right.
Or so.
Can any unit handle either one of those? Or
no.
So
yeah,
each unit specifically has their own. Yeah. So.
But right now, what you'll have is people that are trying to sell you, in my opinion, lesser quality equipment, because they're going to scare tactic you into saying, well, they can't even get 454 now. They can't even do this. They can't do that. This is your only option.
Right.
It's not your only option. You can still get refrigerant. Units come charged with refrigerant. Worst case scenario, you put it in. It's not optimal until you can get that refrigerant added to it. it'll work. So I mean, there's other ways around that.
Gotcha.
But
Well, I'm glad you brought that up. So if they have to have a new unit, there's 10,000 different units out there. And then there's also units like Linux that also sells a sister. They have a sister company beneath that. So tell us a little about, what units you stand behind and what and why and what they look for.
So we're Ring Pro Partners. That is that is my preferred brand. Now I sell every brand you can think of, from Carrier to Train to Linux to everything but Goodman.
Everything but Goodman.
But that's just based on my experience as a technician. That's based on, warranty calls. Not saying Goodman's horrible equipment. It's not bad. I've just not had as good of luck with it in the past.
Right.
Every unit has its own issues. Every unit, you can go Consumer Reports and read about, units and stuff, but just remember that is Consumer Reports.
Right.
That's not Qualified Heat and Air Company reports. Right. So, if someone gets mad because their unit went down, and they rate it poorly, it reflects in that report. But with the brand we do sell, we've had great product support, if there are warranties. I can count on one hand how many warranties that we've had as a company, maybe two hands, but still, how many warranties we've had as a company is based on a part that fell over Ring's part. They're pretty indestructible from my experience in putting them in.
Okay.
So that's why we rep that brand better than some other ones. But again, I sell every brand because with the price increases and stuff we're having, I have to bring the best value and the most quality equipment to my customers. Therefore, we're not loyal to one brand, so therefore we're able to shop prices out there against all of them and bring the best value, whatever that may be at the time. Because, if Train goes up on their price 10%, but Ring didn't, well, you can pay more for that brand name, or you can pay less. The same warranties. The only one that offers a different warranty in this industry is an Amana, which is the subsidiary of Daikin or Goodman. They offer a 12-year on the compressor versus the 10-year everyone else offers. But outside of, there are some sub brands like Train offers Run True. It's a Train product. It looks like a Train. It's just not painted, but you sacrifice on your warranty. It's their more affordable line. So they only give a 5-year versus the 10.
So how important is that warranty? I mean, is it good to go ahead and pay the extra, get that 10-year warranty?
I mean, in my experience with it is, typically in that 10 years, you won't have a problem.
Right.
But when you do, if you do, yes, you want that warranty. Because, let's say a compressor went out at year 9. Well, you're either out of pocket for $3,500 or you're out of pocket for $1,000.
Right.
For the labor.
The labor part.
So that's
I think people don't understand that too. I'm glad you brought that up. So warranty, it's covered warranty. They think, well, when I get it repaired, it's going to be free.
Correct.
Not necessarily, because warranty is just covering the parts. Still got to pay for the labor.
Yeah. There's a legal side to the way warranties are offered. And I'm not going to get into all the details on that because I don't know off the top of my head the exact facts. But there's only so much you can offer labor warranty wise without having it bound with another company. So they offer labor warranties. We offer labor warranties that you can purchase separately with your system. That'll protect the same system up to 10 years as well.
Gotcha.
It's through a third party. You'll see a lot of companies out there that will try to sell you 10-year parts and labor warranties. Some of them are legitimate. Some of them have ran the cost of the equipment up so high,
right,
it don't matter to them. So it's be careful. And again, the sales tactics and ask the questions, because it is very important to be informed when you're doing this. Because if you're getting a true 10-year manufacturer warranty, that don't matter who you go with, who you buy it from. If you bought it from me and you went to Joe Blow's Heat and Air tomorrow, that's 10-year manufacturer warranty would still be there.
Gotcha. So my next question is how many years does a unit last? Or can it last? I've seen them last a long time, but on average, about how?
So the Industry standard is between 10 to 12 years, I believe, is what they say. You know, I tell customers all the time, I've worked on 20-year-old units, and they're like, should I replace it? I'm like, it's still working.
Yeah.
You know, you don't have to.
Yes.
You know, and I've seen is the oldest unit I've ever seen was a 1970 model unit that was still running.
No way.
And I could not talk him into replacing it to save my life. I tried, you know. I'm like, hey, this thing's probably, I mean, this thing's old, you know, it's pulling some amperage when it runs. He's like, yeah, but I like it. I'm like, okay, sounds good, you know. So we put a fan motor on it and I left, you know. But it's you know, there is a point, and like I said, it's based on kind of the parameters, you know, keeping them maintained, keeping the filters clean, keeping, you know, condenser coils clean, stuff to that nature help prolong the life of it.
Right, a service call you talked about,
Correct.
A maintenance agreement you talked about, to make
Right.
sure it's getting checked on.
But, you know, manufacturers build things to fail these days,
Yeah.
from cars to units to whatever. So they're not built
To last.
And they haven't been for probably 15 years.
Well, they don't make any money if they do that.
Correct.
You know, it's kind of like, you know, with the cure for cancer, if they could cure it, then all of a sudden, and I think there is a cure, but that's another subject we'll talk about. So thank you so much for coming on. That has helped. I hope you guys got some great tips out of this. The ninja trick, hope that helped out too. So anything that can help you as a homeowner, try to, you know, understand what the cost is going to be, not to get scammed, making sure you're in the ballpark. You know, anything you can do, like I said, reaching out to friends, like ask for referrals, using ChatGPT if you have any friends, maybe that's your friend. And just, you know, just making sure you do your homework. The more homework you do as a customer, the more you learn about your label, the more you learn about your system, the more educated you are. So when this happens, you can make an educated decision. So that's what this is all about. So, you know, knowing your home like a pro, you know, that's what we're after here is teaching you the education you need to know so you don't get caught in a scam or something like that. Okay. If you like what you saw, click below. There's also too, before you leave, there's a video right up here that's going to save you money on paint. So I'm able to give you my 50% discount on paint. So check that out. I'd love to have you take advantage of that. And guys, our next interview is going to be with insurance. So we're going to talk about everything that, as far as insurance around your home, what you should be looking for, what you should be protecting. So be looking for that video next week. Other than that, thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next video.